to be here on behalf of Charlotte United for Palestine. We are a group formed by Palestinians for Palestinians and for our allies with a singular mission to take organized, consistent action toward the liberation of Palestine and the restoration of full human rights for all Palestinians. Today is a momentous occasion, as Charlotte has the privilege of welcoming 2024 presidential candidate Dr. Jill Stein, brought to you by Charlotte United for Palestine in collaboration with the Palestinian Cultural Organization at UNC Charlotte and the Charlotte Muslim Caucus. This movement is bigger than any one event, any one protest. It is the power of mass mobilization. The thousands, the millions who have taken to the streets, occupied campuses, passed ceasefire resolutions, and disrupted the normal operations of institutions that sustain injustice. From protesting in the streets, to targeting weapons manufacturers, from boycotting and divesting, to amplifying the Uncommitted Votes campaign, we are sending a powerful message. We have political power, and we are here to exercise it. In the past 9 months, our collective action has sparked a monumental shift in the false narrative that the United States has so long upheld. The live-stream genocide unfolding in Gaza has torn the veil up from the lies the U.S. and Israel has used to justify apartheid, occupation, and siege. The world is watching, and so is America, and the power of this movement is undeniable. As people of conscience living in the heart of a nation that funds and supports this injustice, it is our duty to create political and social crises within the American ruling body. We cannot appeal to the moral sensibilities of the Biden-Harris administration or any other ruling power that perpetuates these crimes. We must disrupt, we must agitate, and we must lift the levers of power from their hands, because the lives of Palestinians depend on it. Right now, we are seeing the results of this mass mobilization. Arrest warrants for Netanyahu and his war criminal accomplices have been issued by the world's highest courts. No candidate, whether it's Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, has been able to escape disruption during this entire election season. The silence that once surrounded Palestine has been shattered by the relentless, courageous voices of this movement. Today, let's continue to honor that spirit, and let's build on this momentum. The power is with the people. The future belongs to justice, and Palestine will be free. So today's program will start out with a few speakers. We're starting a little late than we anticipated, so we're going to have about 2 to 3 minutes with each speaker, and then we'll end with a keynote speaker with Dr. Jill Stein, and we will then open it up to question and answers to all of you. So our first speaker today will be Abdullah with the Palestinian Cultural Organization, a student at UNC Charlotte who's been active for Palestine and is spreading awareness on campus.
Thank you all for being here to begin with. I specifically want to thank the students and the younger generation who made their way, had the time to come out to this event, learn more about Dr. Stein, and just to educate yourself. I also want to thank Dr. Stein for being here as well to speak with the students. This is something not many candidates would do, if any, really. I want to apologize for students. I know it would have been easier for us to have it at UNC, but knowing UNC's pro-Zionist, beliefs, it was difficult to do that. However, we're here now, and we have Dr. Stein, so let's be in the moment. To the students and the younger generation, this is a great opportunity for us to educate ourselves. Humanity has been in the hands of the elites for decades, and we are now paying the price for that. The planet is warming, and innocent lives are dying everywhere to satisfy the needs of those who are in power. So let's unite. It is time for us to use our power, to use our voices, to use our everything that we have in us to support those who support us. The older generation will not be with us forever. We will be, at some point, the older generation. We will face the consequences the two parties in power now are giving us. Everything they're doing to us now, we are the ones who will face the consequences. Our kids will be the ones who will face consequences. Our grandkids will be the ones who face the consequences. We cannot let them continue. We cannot let them stay in power. So let's educate ourselves. We have multiple choices. Dr. Stein here, our best choice. She stood with us. She came and marched with us in Washington. So let's help her. The way she stood for us, let's stand with her. She marched with us from Washington, and she's chanted the Free Palestine. She's been vocal about Palestine. She spoke about the genocide. So now it's our turn to stand with her and help her reach her goal. So let's do that. Students, younger generations, remember, if we want a better future for our kids, we must act now. We cannot wait anymore. The lesser of two evils is not necessary. Voting for a two-party system is only a lie embedded by those in power to gain more profit or resources off of the innocent lives they're killing and off of the working class, which is us. They are lying to us. We have options. As you clearly can see, the Democrats who are denying Dr. Stein from being even on TV, you can't even see her on the media. As you can see, they are lying about this. You have options. We have Dr. Stein here tonight. Ask her questions. Talk to her. Ask her anything. There's nothing you cannot. She's here now. So take this opportunity and talk to her. Educate yourself. So let's end this two-party system before it ends us. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdullah. That is so true. Everybody, let's take this moment. Let's ask our questions. We have a presidential candidate that's here for you all. So let's take advantage of that moment and let's build this third-party vote. So next up, we have a long-term activist in Charlotte, Jabril Huff, next for our speaker.
Assalamu alaikum. We are approaching a historic presidential election. I believe the Arab, Palestinian, and Muslim community vote will make a statement like never before. It is time to reject the politics of fear and vote our conscience like never before. We must be a principled people who are bound to those most important principles more so than any political party or personality. We're not donkeys or elephants. We're camels. Where camels has gone a long time without drinking water. Now it's time to drink some water. The water of peace and justice. A water that is against Zionism and genocide. With that in mind, the choice is clear. Our patience is worn thin. We can't act like there's a long-term, long-planned game of ending a genocide. The democratic institution has supported the genocide in Gaza. They refuse to even allow our Palestinian sister to speak at the DNC. Kamala has said that she would not have done anything differently than Genocide Joe. She's also said that she would not put restrictions on Israel and continue to supply weapons for a continued genocide and even expanding it. If we were to vote for Kamala during the genocide, they would never respect our vote.
Right.
And they'll feel like they can do anything and get away with it. There should be no blank checks for any politician or party. And if a genocide isn't your red line, then what is it? I don't believe you have one. Some have accused Jill Stein as a grifter seeking benefit from our community during this genocide. Jill has been with us for a long time, not just this term. She didn't just arrive exploiting the situation. I voted for her before feeling alone, as many Muslims voted against our best interests. So the fact is, Jill hasn't changed, our community has changed. And I embrace that change. Lastly, if Kamala loses, I'm sure that some will blame and target us. They'll target the Arab, Palestinian, and Muslim vote. They will even call us selfish. I think voting third party is the most selfless thing we can do. For no matter who wins this election, including Trump, our lives will be so much better than those in Gaza.
Oh, yeah.
Who are losing everything. The babies are being burned. So don't fall for the politics of fear. Don't talk to me about Project 2025. Talk to me about Project 1948. Free Palestine.
Thank you, Jabril. That is very right. So we know that the both Democratic Party and Republican Party has been lying to us for way too long. We know that they're one and the same, and we are here to build people power. We are here for each other. So with that, I will welcome the next speaker that we have is our local Muslim leader, Imam Atif.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most gracious. وَافْعَلُوا الْخَيْرَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. So I was talking to my sister today morning, and she reminded me that in 2016, I told her to vote for Jill Stein. Then she was telling me, at that time, she thought I was crazy. And then today she said, I get it. And I think the point that Jabril made, that this is not something that started now, this is something that has been always a problem within our community, that we were told that to find success, we always have to appease. To find success, you have to compromise. To find success, political expediency is the name of the game. But I think it's important for us to take responsibility. Moral responsibility is what you need to vote. It's not about what you are told that is the right thing to do, it's what you know is the right thing to do. Because when Allah tells you in the Quran, وَافْعَلُوا الْخَيْرِ, do good so that you may succeed. But there's people that are telling you, vote against yourselves. That's the only way you will succeed. If you vote for someone else, you're going to fail. But who decides failure or success? Is it the people in this world, or is it the one who created this world? Is it the one who told you that these murders that are happening are not moral by any sense of the word? We're not talking about anything that is just. We're not talking about anything that is ethical. We're not talking about anything any human being, let alone Muslims, would ever justify. But that's what we're told to do. Justify it because it's the lesser evil. I'm telling you, we're not voting for evil, period. We want to vote for what is right. We want to vote for what is good. It's no longer about these chains and these shackles, and I wish our VP was here today, Dr. Butch Ware. Love him. He has been amazing. And after that interview on The Breakfast Club, I was like, I'm sold. I'm sold. This is the message that we always needed in the Muslim community, where you're unapologetic. It has to be about principles, not parties. And I don't care what party he's connected to. When he was speaking facts, I was like, this is what it means to be a Muslim. It's not about fear, because this is what we're sold on. That you should be afraid if you make the wrong choice, then you will face the consequences. But it's not about consequences that are limited to this world, but it's about the people that are tied to your choices. Make the right choice, because Hind deserves better. Woo!
Thank you, Imam. Those were very powerful words, and I know every single person in here felt those in your heart. And so with that, I'll welcome our next speaker, Anna Lee, the co-chair of the North Carolina Green Party.
It is an honor and a privilege to be with you today. My name is Anna Lee Ordubadi, and I am the co-chair of the North Carolina Green Party. And one of the things that I think is so important about this moment is that this community, and in North Carolina at that, has set the stage for the nation and what it means to be unapologetic in favor of humanity. MAPAC, the Muslim American Public Coalition, was one of the first of so many to endorse Dr. Stein and Butch Ware, and it is really a historic moment. As we watch what's happening, we are called to action, and North Carolina has risen to that challenge. And so one of the things, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what the Green Party believes in. When we talk about social justice, we believe that everyone, all human life is sacred, and that everyone deserves the rights and freedoms that we enjoy. So that's a big part of our platform. There are 4 pillars. When we talk about ecology, ecological wisdom, we recognize that this planet is ours to take care of. And so we want to absolutely recognize that we have a job and a mandate to hold accountable those forces and those corporations and a system, in fact, that exploits and pollutes and makes this planet, continues this situation of utter catastrophe. When we think about peace, we're talking about a system that exploits, and colonial white supremacy that is so cooked into the society that we live in. We really have to pay attention, because we are, in fact, in an abusive relationship with the two-party system. They take us for granted, and they lie and gaslight us into being afraid and into worrying about things that, honestly, when you're watching what's happening in Gaza, is the last thing I'm worried about. And so we believe that the weapons manufacturers, these companies, these evil entities like AIPAC that have all the power, that have the politicians in their pocket, that the only way they can be held to account is that we come together as one human family and we vote with our hearts. Really take action. And the thing is, a question earlier today was, what are we going to do? There's so much money. There's so much influence. Are we ever going to, take PAC money? And the reason we're not is because it's not about the party. It's not about the politician. It's about a movement, and a movement can be sustained when the people come together.
Right.
And when money gets involved, it will corrupt. So the Green Party is getting money out of politics. And that requires you and me to work together. So with the North Carolina Green Party, we want to continue to set the stage for the United States to be a moral example of what we're capable of. And we want to get involved and really open our doors to the Muslim, Arab, Black, young, all of the people who have really not had their voices represented in this country. So I encourage you all to please do sign up and to let us know what are those issues that matter most to you. I'm privileged to give a training through Jill Stein's website. So if you go to jillstein2024.com under events, there's a community organizer training every Wednesday, and we'll talk about how do I get involved? What does it mean to get involved? Because just your vote is not enough. If we're going to build power that can really move and build the movement that it's going to take to free Palestine, we have to do the work. And that means that we have to show up. So I really believe, and I've talked to a lot of folks in Charlotte, and I'm hoping that we can continue to keep that conversation open around getting people involved to come to the meetings and make this party what it needs to be to tell the truth. Because going back to the gaslighting that's taking place, you can get fired for telling the truth about what's happening in Gaza. A lot is at stake. Our students have put their bodies on the line to stand up for what's right. And we need to do the work to continue to sustain that movement. And so I want to talk just for a minute about Dr. Jill Stein. She's a physician, a mother, a truth teller, an activist. She comes to us today after bouncing across the United States to spread this message of hope. And when there are forces of darkness that want us to be afraid, I am honored and humbled by the Muslim community and their courage and their leadership to say, we are not afraid. The children and the humans in Gaza cannot sit by. We don't have the space to be afraid. We have to move in hope. And so we move today in hope, not just with our vote, but but to build the movement and the infrastructure to continue to grow and sustain the Green Party and make it what it needs to be. We don't need the money when we have the people. Yeah. The people's agenda is what we offer in the Green Party. By getting money out of politics, we can tell the truth and we can be honest and we can move with our hearts. So I have really been inspired by Dr. Stein's passion. I have been moved by her persistence and really motivated by her brilliance and courage to continue to lead this green movement. So it is my great honor to introduce to you Dr. Jill Stein.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you again to all the organizers who brought us together today. Thank you so very much to this community, to the Muslim American, the Arab American community, which really is the conscience of the nation. You have stood up as a moral compass, shining a light for all of us in a country which is lost at sea right now and badly needs the moral compass of this community. So please give yourselves a round of applause for that. It is no small thing that the American public is now overwhelmingly opposed to this genocide. In fact, within 1 month of it beginning, already polls, the Reuters poll showed in November that already 68% of Americans, after just 1 month of this genocide, Americans were already persuaded and were calling for an immediate ceasefire and a diplomatic solution. And then a few months later, remarkably, Americans, 61% are now saying that it's time for a weapons embargo and an end to military aid to the apartheid. And very hopefully, I would note, it's not only Americans that are saying this, of course. You know, in addition to the rulings of the World Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court and the United Nations Security Council, that we also have many nations in the world now saying not only that this genocide must end, but also that it's time to stop the flow of weapons to Israel. We now have France, Spain, and Italy that are all on board for a weapons boycott. So this is coming, have no doubt, this is coming. In many other ways, this is coming. You know, a wonderful Israeli economist named Shir Hever, who's also a journalist, he was commenting the other day that countries that go fascist are not long for this world. They cannot sustain democracy, they cannot sustain their government, and indeed this is happening in the state of Israel, where now recent polls show that 1 out of every 3 residents of the state of Israel is in the process of leaving. Their economy is in a shambles. One of the major ports has been shut down because trade is not moving, and of course the tourist industry has completely ground to a halt. Israel has never participated in military action that lasted for this long, and its economy cannot take this, its people cannot take this. It is an incredibly depraved military force that's taken hold in a depraved politics, a politics of Zionism, and that has fully taken hold. And its days are numbered. There is no doubt about that. In this country, the problem is our elected misleaders, because they are not representing us. It's clear what the American people want. An end to military aid, an end to support, economic aid, and so on. The people want that. It is only our elected officials who do not. And, this is not only most of Congress, just about all of Congress, in fact, but, in particular, this is the Biden-Harris administration, and it's also Donald Trump. We have one candidate who is an active genocider and the other one who is promising to finish the job. So it is just so important, as the other speakers have said, we cannot allow ourselves or anyone that we know to be talked into voting for genocide. If you vote for either of the genocidal candidates, you are affirming genocide, you are endorsing it, and you are enabling it. We must vote against it and urge everyone we know to stand up and do the same. We are seeing this genocidal war, which is expanding right now, in a way which is absolutely breathtaking and unbelievably dangerous. Not only that this genocidal assault has spread now to the West Bank and also to Lebanon, that several other countries are being bombed now, including Syria and parts of Iran, actually. But, you know, Israel is intent on a major military action against Iran and is fully expecting, if not on the first strike, then perhaps on the second strike, to go after Iran's nuclear facilities. And Russia has already weighed in, basically, to say, do not do this. So we have the makings of not just a regional conflict, but potentially a global conflict, and also potentially even a nuclear conflict. And nuclear confrontation anywhere is a threat to health and survival anywhere. There is no such thing as a local nuclear exchange. They are all inherently global. You know, when you see that mushroom cloud going up, that is actually a conveyor belt. And what it is doing is taking debris and inserting it into the upper atmosphere where it is not subject to weather. So it doesn't come down, not for decades. So every time there's a nuclear explosion, and it doesn't take very many of them to get to critical mass, to basically begin having a devastating impact on the food supply, and that's called nuclear winter. So we must remove from power our reckless criminal warmongers who are putting us all at risk. We need to remove them from power before they get us all killed. So this is not only something that we must do for Gaza, that we must do for human rights, that we must do for international law. We must also do this in our own self-interest. And for those who somehow do not see this, this absolutely shocking massacre taking place, live streamed before our very eyes, those whose eyes are closed and whose hearts are dead, even they have reason to mobilize and shut down this genocide because they too are at risk. Right now, the U.S. is the top dog, or we used to be the top dog, put it that way, in sort of global military affairs. And we have been acting as top dog for decades, particularly since the breakup of the Soviet Union around 1990. We have been really the sole unopposed power. We have committed approximately 80 regime change operations. That's not even with war, that's just covertly. We have overturned democratically elected governments all around the world. We have fought war after war in the Middle East, and these are losing wars. We're not even winning these wars. We're simply contributing to chaos and murder and destruction around the whole world, and climate change, which is also another consequence of this massive military effort. So there are so many reasons for this to stop, but when we are no longer top dog, we too need international law and human rights in order to have basic, security and justice around the world. If it's not international law, then it is the law of the jungle. So by dismantling international law right now, which is what we are doing, Israel is our proxy, and the United States and Israel together are defying international law and essentially dismantling it. This happens at our peril. So there are so many reasons, for us to be standing up and shutting down this war right now. It's important also to know what a perfect storm it is that we are in right now. The need for transformative change has never been so great, and the possibility of that change has never been so close at hand. Part of the reason for that is that the empire abroad is not only carrying out a war on Muslims worldwide and people of color worldwide and colonialism worldwide, but that force also has consequences here at home, namely a war on working people and a war on our democracy. So we see, for example, our democracy is absolutely under attack. Not only the Patriot Act, not only the yes and the NDAA, absolutely, and one thing after another. The assault on our rights of free speech, as well as the assault on our right to peacefully protest. And at the same time, we are seeing the militarization of our local police forces, who are being trained now by who? The Israeli occupation forces are now training, if not every community, then probably most of them. This is now routine for local police forces to be trained in techniques of crowd management and basically brutal violation of our civil liberties. And it's happening in these cop cities. I think most of us know about the cop city in Atlanta. Does that ring a bell for most people? And many people are not aware that that's just one of dozens. There are in fact about 80 such cop cities now under construction. Many of them, if not most of them, under Democratic Party control, under local city councils, like in Atlanta, where this violation of our basic civil liberties is being undertaken by the Democrats. In the same way that this expanding genocidal war is also being led by the Democrats. The Republicans are, right there as well, but at least they have some slight semblance of an internal debate. Within the Democratic Party, there really is not. And the Democratic Party really is leading the charge on this genocide, as Kamala Harris refuses, as mentioned earlier, to even allow Palestinian voices to be heard, where at the DNC, they talked about joy. This is an era of joy, which is just such a perverted thought for them to be asserting joy in the face of a genocide. And you had the Palestinian advocates at the DNC who were not allowed to speak, but who were reading the names of the victims outside. And I don't know if you saw the footage of the DNC representatives going by with their hands on their ears. And, that is absolutely shame. Can we hear that? Shame! This is shame. And it's important for us to know that we don't have to stand by here. That is not an option. In the words of Frederick Douglass, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. We are that demand. We must be that demand. If we don't make that demand, then there is absolutely no hope. But if we do make that demand, then we have a very high probability of success. And the reason for that is expressed by Alice Walker, the poet and novelist and advocate for Palestinian human rights. What she said was that the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. In fact, we have the numbers, because we've seen the polls. We have the solutions, which are basically pick up the phone and tell Bibi Netanyahu that his war is over, which our campaign will do on day one if we are so fortunate. And, it's not only that majorities oppose this genocidal war, it's also what the cost of that war and the endless war machine behind this genocidal war. What is the cost of that to America? Well, not everybody knows, and it's remarkable people oppose this war even without knowing this. But if we get to the debate microphone, this is what we always say as Greens, that in fact this endless war budget is costing us half of our congressional dollars are spent on the endless war machine, which is why we don't have the money that we need for healthcare and housing and education and for the climate crisis. All of these are really in a state of emergency here in this country, and the American people are tired of being thrown under the bus, just on those terms alone. So we have people who are really ready, who said long before this election, who've been saying really for the past several years, that it is time for an independent political party that is not part of the parties of war and Wall Street. It's time for a party that stands up for the public interest, that is of, by, and for the people. That's exactly what the Green Party does and what we are about. And we have the solutions to the crises that people are facing. And in this election, and this is my third run here, so I have a baseline to compare this to. I started out in 2012, actually. And it's just phenomenal, as one of the prior speakers was saying, we haven't changed. Times have changed, and people have had an undeniable kind of public relations campaign being conducted by the economy and by the climate and by rising disease and disability, that this system is not working for us, that it's time for a change. So people are really ready for that change right now. It's over 60% who are saying in poll after poll that it is time for an independent new party. So people are throwing in the towel on the current political system. And this being my third time, it's just so evident in the numbers of people who are turning out, that the fact that so many people who are coming out now have been lifelong Democrats. Genocide is a red line for anyone who is not asleep at the wheel. And if I may say it, for anyone who is not brain dead and heart dead, it's absolutely critical to stand up. And I say this as a Jew who grew up right after the genocide of Jews in the Second World War. And our community was asking itself, is there life after genocide?
Right.
And where is that life after genocide? And what we resolved in my community, attending a Reform synagogue, singing in the children's choir, what we resolved was that we were going to get over this because we are not going to allow this to happen again, not to anyone. And as I am grateful, so grateful to the Muslim American community and to the brave students who have been standing up on campus against incredible, suppression, fascism. I want to shout out for Jewish Voice for Peace and many other students. And of course, I have to give a big shout out to my running mate, Butch Ware, who was, I think, sent from heaven to make this happen, because we only met actually a couple days before we announced that he would be our vice presidential candidate. We had had another wonderful, very capable Muslim American candidate for VP, but he had family illness that really forced him to drop out just before we were about to announce. And we were trying to figure out, well, who can possibly come in and stand up? And we actually then happened to have an interview arranged with him because he's a social media activist, and we did an interview, and it was like we were, coming from exactly the same background, except that he, is a black Muslim man, and I'm a white Jewish woman, and we had exactly the same thoughts about just about everything, except my background is as a medical doctor. So I'm always thinking about, the circumstances of the moment and how do we fix them. That's just, what you do in the healthcare world. You're just kind of confronting the emergency of the moment. But he comes at this as a historian of Islam and a historian of social movements and revolution. So it was like so amazing because our skill sets and our knowledge base completely complement each other. I know all about getting on the ballot and policy solutions. And he knows all about the history of genocide and other forms of history that are just really critical. So we have this amazing dialogue now as part of this election, and we are able to drive this dialogue into the election because thanks to the help of so many of you, we are on the ballot for about 95% of voters coming into the ballot. And one last comment about our ticket, which is that as a Jewish white woman and a Muslim black man, we have the bases covered on the issues here, so we are ready for anything that comes at us. And if you saw the Breakfast Club, did anybody see that?
Oh, yeah.
If you haven't seen it, do look it up, because it's just remarkable. They thought they were ambushing us. They had the Democratic Party attack dog on the show, which we didn't know about. I mean, not that it mattered, because she had absolutely nothing original to say. It's not like we haven't heard these smears before. So they were trying to kind of ambush us with these smears on camera, and we gave them, quite a pushback to where, if you read the comments now, in fact, the comments I think are maybe even more important than the content of the program, because what the comments tell you is that we the people are not going to take this anymore. And there are now 21,000 comments on that show. And almost without exception, what they say is, I wasn't going to bother voting in this election before, but now that I know about the choice that's there before us, I'm going out to register green today, and I'm voting. I'm going to wrap here so we can have time for questions, but I just want to emphasize that this really is the perfect storm. This is a more perfect storm than I ever thought that I would experience, and I have been really organizing ever since the Vietnam War, basically, when I became a really confirmed anti-war activist. But I was a social activist because I saw what the Democratic Party and the Republican Party could do in the Vietnam War, and I was not interested one bit in that kind of politics. So I was just a social organizer and a medical doctor, and then organizing to try to address the roots of disease and death and disability, which are in our communities. You can't really make people healthy in the doctor's office alone.
Correct.
Everyone has a right to that health care, absolutely. And you cannot be healthy without that health care fully. But the real driver here is the conditions in our communities. And I discovered, as I tried to go upstream to really address the makings of our health and disease, I discovered that there's no fixing it unless we address the mother of all illnesses, our sick political system. So that's how I became kicking and screaming. Not till my hair was this color did I actually become a political activist. So I think most of you in this room are way ahead of me here. So congratulations to you on that. But it just became so clear that we must challenge the system, and we have been building to challenge that system. And right now, people are so ready to flip. And it's not just the Breakfast Club. It's whether you can watch the comments on Mehdi Hassan. I don't know if you watched that one, but that was a real ambush. But it totally produced the absolute opposite effect. People are witnessing the savage brutality of the Democratic Party and its effort to basically strike down democracy. It should be renamed the Anti-Democratic Party, which is what it actually is. So to look at the commentary on YouTube and on social media, we are winning this war. We are absolutely winning this war, and it's just a question of time. How much can we get the word out? Know this, in 2020, the presidential race, 1 out of every 3 eligible voters did not vote.
Right.
Because they do not accept these zombie, abusive, predatory candidates and parties being rammed down our throats. So 1 out of every 3 Americans will not vote unless they hear that there's an alternative. And by the way, if anybody tells you that we are stealing votes, just don't listen for a minute. Push back, because that's not true. Politicians don't own your vote. Nobody owns your vote. You own your vote. suggests that that a candidate is entitled to your vote and that you owe your vote to someone, that campaign does not even deserve your consideration of your vote. So stand up against that, because there are a lot of people who aren't voting, and what we do outside of the system is we give people a reason to come to the polls who otherwise aren't going to vote. So it's just not true. These votes are not stolen. If Kamala Harris wanted to win this race, she would enact a weapons embargo immediately, a month ago, 6 months ago. But they don't want to talk about that, which is why the press always accuses us of being spoilers, because that's what they want to talk about. So whenever anybody says to you that you're a spoiler, or the election might get spoiled, or we might be helping Trump, just, point out to them that Muslims in particular, but thinking Americans, breathing Americans, Americans whose hearts are beating, are not going to vote for genocide. Kamala Harris has the ability to seek those votes right now if she would enact a weapons embargo. But the problem is, she would rather continue the murder of innocent women and children and men than she would win the election. What does that say about that candidate? That is not a candidate who deserves our votes or who deserves our sympathy in any way. So forget this notion that there's some lesser evil. It's certainly not the candidate who's perpetrating genocide right now. The other one promises to do it, but there's one who's doing it right now. That is certainly not the lesser evil. The campaign that is in full assault against our civil liberties, our right to protest, the two political parties, in fact, which are trying to push this Anti-Semitism Awareness Act that redefines opposing genocide as anti-Semitism, which is absolutely outrageous. In my view, that's the most anti-Semitic thing you can say, that it's anti-Semitic to oppose genocide. That's absolutely ridiculous. And also the notion that this has anything to do with religion. This is about Zionism, which is a political ideology. Muslims, Christians, and Jews lived together in peace in historic Palestine for millennia. It was only with the arrival of the Zionists that the ethnic cleansing began, and the trouble and the conflict and the murders and the massacres began, actually, even before the State of Israel was declared its independence. So the issue here is not religion, the issue is Zionism. And when that ethnic cleansing began, it wasn't just Muslims, it was also Christians and Jews as well. So don't let anybody get away with saying that this is a religious conflict. It is not. The problem here is Zionism. That is a fixable problem. It is an ideology that should not exist and has actually been quite controversial within the Jewish religion throughout its history. So this is kind of an anomaly right now that it is being presented as Judaism. It's absolutely not, and this is an insult to Judaism. The ultra-Orthodox rabbis who were ethnically cleansed out of Jerusalem by the Zionists, they say, in fact, that Zionism is anti-Jewish because it defies the basic tenets of Judaism within the Ten Commandments, that being thou shalt not steal and thou shalt not kill. So let's not be talked into forgetting for a minute that the problem here is Zionism. It is not a conflict of religions. So bottom line is, this is fixable. For us, it would be fixed on day one by picking up the phone, which is what Ronald Reagan did to put an end to Israel's war on Lebanon back in 1982. It was over within 24 hours. That war, that massacre was over within 24 hours. We can do the same thing. Here's some more things we can do on day one. We can instruct the Department of Justice. If we're in the White House, we get to instruct the Department of Justice to undertake a lawsuit against AIPAC for violation of the Foreign Agent also instruct the Department of Justice to take the consolidated, corporatized mainstream media to court for violating antitrust laws. Once again, break up the consolidated media and have different points of view that aren't networked with the war industry and the war contractors and all that. So we can begin to have a press that serves as a watchdog, not as a lapdog to power, so we can actually have an informed electorate. And then just a couple things, I could talk on a long time, but I'm just going to name a couple other things that we can also do on day one. We can bring back town hall meetings so that electeds have to deal with their constituents. Right now, they are too busy talking to their donors instead of their voters. Voters are supposed to instruct them so they can actually represent us. So we can turn the crank on that. We can also bring back real congressional hearings for a change to ensure that the public is informed, you know, like what's going on in this genocide, for example, about the all-out assault on the medical profession, on hospitals, on health clinics, the fact that children are being targeted specifically and shot in the head right now, the fact that even the United Nations peacekeepers are coming under fire. I mean, the incredible barbarity of this genocide needs to be seen and heard. And the cost of this war machine conducting the genocide needs to be seen and heard. It's not only half of our congressional budget. If you spread these costs out over the American electorate, it's about $12,000 per household in this past year for the cost of this endless war machine. So when the American people hear about that one, they will be even more opposed to the continuation of this genocide, as well as the continuation of the endless war machine. We need to move from an era of foreign policy dominated by economic and military domination to a foreign policy based on international law, human rights, and diplomacy. That's what we need. And that also allows us to cut the military budget by at least half. We'll still be spending more than any of the, biggest spenders out there. So this will not compromise our security. It will actually improve our security by enabling us to spend our tax dollars on the true crises that we have right here and right now. You are probably aware that there's not enough money for FEMA to assist the communities that have been devastated by the recent hurricanes. Well, the deficit for FEMA is about the size of the last package that Israel was rewarded, this $8 or $9 billion that was rewarded to Israel just after it expanded the war into Lebanon. And that ties into my last point here, which is that this perfect storm, unfortunately, is getting more perfect all the time. And as much as the American people are opposed to genocide, opposed to the endless war machine, opposed to its costs that prevent us from having health care and housing and education and climate action, in addition to that, this war machine is revving up. And you may or may not be aware that the draft is back. The draft has been reenacted, and names and addresses and your cell phone and your email, your social media, your everything is on file, ready for the draft to be reinitiated. And all it takes for that to happen is for the White House to decide that we are at war and we need boots on the ground. Well, guess what's percolating right now? This expanding war in the Middle East, which is expanding as we speak, and we know that there is a major move coming up before the election, because they've already announced that Israel will be striking Iran, and Iran will be striking back, and up we go, up the escalation ladder. Biden has already put more boots on the ground, not only the battleships and the ships that go with them. There are 5,000 U.S. servicemen and women that go with each of those aircraft carriers. and the ships that go with them. 40,000 U.S. servicemen and women that are in the Middle East and are very vulnerable to getting pulled into this, which will then, accelerate U.S. involvement. But we have the potential for this war to grow, and 100 servicemen and women were just sent to Israel to assist with this new missile defense system. So we are on that slippery slope right now. The growing war and the growing threat to our engagement are being dragged into Netanyahu's war, which he's been attempting to do for the past year. That too is a factor in this election, and you could see that kind of crisis really begin to flip votes in a way that's been absolutely unimaginable. Remember, just by getting to 5% of the vote, the landscape of the next election is completely changed, because at 5% we then have access to the ballot in most states. It depends how the numbers sort out, but on average, we would then meet the threshold to be on the ballot in most states. And we also, at that point, would have a guarantee of major public funding in the presidential race of about $12 million. So even if we don't win, no one is throwing away your vote. And no one is throwing away their vote to say no to genocide. Every vote for our campaign is a shot across the bow of the empire, telling them that we are here, we are organized, we are strong and getting stronger by the day. We are not going away. We will prevail together. Going to our website, jillstein2024.com, you can sign up to volunteer. You can be a part of North Carolina's actions, and Anna Lee is one of the people doing the trainings. If you sign up in the volunteer space, you will be offered to come to those trainings. You'll be offered materials to support the key drivers, the engines of grassroots victories, which are simple. It's not rocket science. It's simply tabling, flyering, door knocking, and phone banking, and we'll provide you with the phone numbers and the scripts. If every person in this room decides to own this election, decides to own the end of genocide, there is no limit to the power that we have. Together we are absolutely an unstoppable force, because in fact we do have the numbers, and 1 out of 3 won't otherwise be voting. So by getting the word out, especially by talking to friends and neighbors and colleagues and students, and the non-voting public tends to be younger, of color, and lower income. So by talking to the more disenfranchised among us, who have the most to benefit from our agenda, by the way, that's who could totally turn this election on its head. So don't let anybody say that this election is not winnable. It's winnable in many ways, and we decide what defines our win, by the way. Yes, we define our win. But that win absolutely includes the potential to be in the White House and to actually win that race in a 4-way race, and you have at least 4 candidates on the ballot between Trump, Harris, RFK, and ourselves. So you got 3 pro-genocide candidates splitting the pro-genocide vote, and you've got 1 anti-genocide candidate, pro-worker, climate emergency campaign that could be unifying a lot of votes if we could get the word out. And if you're talking to students, by the way, be sure to mention that we will abolish student debt. We bailed out the Wall Street banks. We can bail out the victims of those crooks on Wall Street when the economy crashed. And we will make public higher education free. So that tends to mobilize students. We will also, of course, provide health care as a human right to everyone, because we can do that, cover everyone comprehensively. And the well-kept secret is that we actually save $500 billion a year by moving to that system, which cuts the red tape, the paper pushing, and the bureaucracy. We actually save money at the same time that we expand healthcare. And it is such a shame on the heads of our current electeds that they have not already passed that, and they find all kinds of reasons not to. But at any rate, it's like motherhood and apple pie. Our campaign would be a victory for the working people of America, for the students of America, for African American and Arab American and Muslim American. We do have what the American people are clamoring for, and essentially we can provide an America and a world that works for all of us. The capacity to do that is within our reach. Let's make it happen. Thank you all so very much. It's not like that.
Thank you, Dr. Jill Stein. You touched on so much, even a lot of what the questions that were submitted are, so that was really great, and that was really powerful. Everything you said really resonated with all of us, I think, so. And it's exactly right. Our families lived in Palestine for centuries, and we know that this is not a religious war. I really appreciate that you mentioned the students and their power on the campuses, and they really stepped up, and they continue to do so on campuses. And we're building this strength, and we're building this movement, and it's not just about Palestine, it's about the people, and serving the people, and that's what politics should be all about. And so that's what we're doing here, and I really appreciate you coming to Charlotte to do that for us. And so the first question that I have here is that how do you view your candidacy and true chances to make change? Is our goal during this election to break the two-party system monopoly, or are we kickstarting a feasible third choice and a real choice? Do you see our third-party option efforts more viable in the next two election cycles, or may they take longer? Should pro-Palestinians seek a strong lobby arm or break this two-party monopoly shackles?
Thank you so much. I think our time has come. I think this political movement is absolutely unstoppable, and it has been building relentlessly. There has been a huge fear campaign that has been kind of hung around our neck like shackles, and that has really held people back. But I think our lives have become so inordinately stressed and so ridden by crisis in basically every dimension. So many people are struggling to keep a roof over their heads. Homelessness is skyrocketing. Over 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Really in every capacity, people are struggling with crisis in their own lives, and the genocide in Gaza is really a symbol of that. It's kind of a symbol of the crisis of our times, and it feels like the fear campaign has gone about as far as it can go, and people are standing up and breaking that stranglehold of fear right now. So I sort of feel like the strategy that we use going forward, there are many strategies available to us. I believe that we are breaking the stranglehold of the two parties, and that happens now. The Green Party currently has about 150 local office holders, so we do run for local office, and we do this all the time. It's not, this smear that we only come out every 4 years to run for president and then we go hide under a rock. No, it's only the mainstream media that comes out every 4 years and dares to admit that we're here, because they are terrified that we represent what people are demanding. As far as I'm concerned, our campaigns begin on November 6th, really, and we want to see a lot of people, and we want to help a lot of people. I just see so many people who ought to be city councilors, who ought to be state representatives, who ought to be, Congress people. There's just so much talent and passion and vision in this community, I think there's just no stopping us. And we really look forward to helping share best practices and the how-to. That's one thing that the Green Party has been doing for about 20 years and more. We've been running for office at all levels. We know how to deal with the administrative stuff and you know, the tricks of the trade, and we're really so anxious to share that with our growing partners, and I feel like we are going to be absolutely unstoppable together. I urge people you know, to become part of the local Green Party here, and you'll also be part of the National Party in doing that. But we are a grassroots, decentralized organization, so the real work is here at the community level. And communities, different Green Parties decide where they're going to target their efforts. So it really is a local decision. It's based on what you see as the key issues and the best way to work with them. So I would say yes to all of the above. We're going to do all those things, and we're going to be completely unstoppable together. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Next, I want to ask you about the healthcare system is based on profit. And how do you envision to address that as president, and also the industrial prison system, where we know thousands of people are unjustly incarcerated, even for petty crimes. So what are your thoughts on that? And I'll also add, how would you address women's rights issues and bodily autonomy?
Great. Okay, terrific. On the issue of healthcare, there is a great ready-made solution right now. We should have a Medicare for All system, also called single payer. Right now we waste 1 out of every 3 healthcare dollars on bureaucracy and red tape and paper pushing. And those who are in the medical profession are really swamped by this right now. It has a lot to do with burnout. We do so much administrative work. It's shameful when there is an alternative that removes the bureaucracy, the red tape, the mountain of minutia that the current system has to keep track of. And relating to your third question about reproductive health and reproductive rights and women's rights, as a medical doctor myself, you know, I share the view of the healthcare profession that health decisions are between individuals and their healthcare provider. And the crisis in women's reproductive health right now was absolutely avoidable. Roe v. Wade could have been codified for the past many decades, and it was a choice by Democrats not to do that. Both Obama and Joe Biden came to power saying that that would be the first thing that they would do, would be to codify Roe v. Wade. They never did it. And even now, this crisis in women's health could be fixed on a dime, because in the White House they can simply decide to build women's reproductive health clinics right now on federal land. In every state there is federal land, either on military bases or otherwise. We can fix this crisis of reproductive health right now, so it's in their hands. Do not take their propaganda that wants to blame third parties or, you know, Muslims after this race. They're going to be blaming anyone and everyone if they don't win this election. They could win this election by doing the right thing, and they could also take care of the women's health crisis right now by doing the right thing. And the question in between, yes, okay, so on prisons, there's a lot that needs to be done. And our current prison system, our criminal justice system is absolutely shameful, and you know, this is a system that scoops up especially people of color who are massively and disproportionately represented. We have private prisons. We also have private detention centers for migrants, which is also a shame, is not needed, and is counterproductive. We need to end the war on drugs and treat substance use as a public health problem, not as a criminal problem, and grant amnesty to all those who are sitting in prisons right now for and we need to move to a system of more restorative justice, but also a preventive system, so that people are not living lives of hopelessness and poverty and incredible mental health, stress and illness. We need to take care of people and take care of our communities if we have quality education and quality jobs, and we're not poisoning people with a sick food system and a sick air and water supply. You know, we can achieve much greater health and opportunity and economic prosperity. So the solutions are there if we do the right thing.
So we're building third-party votes. We're building up the Green Party. So in the future, or in our vision, if we were able to win a presidency, which we will, what would that look like once we're in presidency and the Congress is going to be still consist a lot of Democrats and Republicans? What would that look like?
So let me just point out that there are a lot of Green Party candidates for Congress, including a wonderful congressional candidate here. Yes, Michael Dublin, who's definitely worthy of your vote. You want to vote for him for sure. So there are candidates who would come in with us if there was a groundswell on behalf of our campaign. Others would come as well. But in addition, by re-establishing democracy through the strategies that I mentioned earlier about holding town hall meetings, about having congressional hearings, we want to get money out of politics, provide public funding for candidates equitably. If we're doing the right thing, we can then begin to move the needle, and especially to compel representatives to do what they're elected to do, which is to represent us, not their big money donors. So there are many ways we can exert pressure that's supposed to happen in a democracy. That can compel the votes, and in addition there are many things that the President can do herself. The President can declare a climate emergency and unleash over $600 billion every year to create jobs in the green areas where we need them in energy, transportation, agriculture, and housing. So there's much that we can do just with presidential executive authority alone, but also we regard the presidency as not simply being the commander-in-chief, but also being the organizer-in-chief. And using the bully pulpit, the president can help explain and engage and basically bring the power of democracy, human rights, and justice, and our basic values as American people to bear on our political system. That's what a democracy is supposed to look like.
What are your thoughts on the current electoral voting system? How are we supposed to, it's not, we know that it's not a fair system for voting, and it's not necessarily our votes are being taken into account as they should be. So what are your thoughts on that?
So our electoral system needs an overhaul from top to bottom. Yeah, so of course it's things like getting rid of the electoral college so that every vote counts, and so that in elections candidates are seeking every vote, not discounting certain states. We need to end gerrymandering so that it's voters who are choosing their representative rather than representatives who are choosing their voters in order to keep themselves conveniently in office. We need to get big money out of politics and put people back in. We can do that through public funding. My home state in Massachusetts passed the clean elections system of public funding. It creates a level playing field, and we also need a constitutional amendment. That'll be a little bit harder, so that's not first on the agenda, but in the meantime we can pass a public funding system. We can't tell them that they can't spend their private billionaire money. They can do that, but if we have an alternative, we can at least hold their feet to the fire about this and clarify who's running as a public interest candidate and who's running as a Wall Street and war machine candidate, and that goes a long way. We need to make ballot access equitable. Right now, if you are running as an independent candidate, you have to collect somewhere around 1 million signatures if you're starting from ground zero, which is unbelievably expensive and time-consuming. It's outrageous that we're only beginning a real campaign now that we have finished the ballot drives in the last 2 or 3 weeks. We should have been able to hit the ground running on day one. So these are not rocket science. These are simple reforms. These are strategies that the political elites have used in order to silence competition, in order to wipe out other voices. Why are they doing that? Because they are terrified of the power of other voices, especially people-powered campaigns. All third parties are not created equal. Some third parties are still sponsored by big dollars, corporate money, and they use the loopholes for legalized bribery, which is basically what goes on. You can write $1 million check. One person can contribute $1 million to Kamala Harris or to Donald Trump or to RFK or to the Libertarian for that matter. $1 million donations come with strings attached. Whether they are explicit or implicit, if you're contributing $1 million, the candidate knows what your concerns and your interests are. That's just the way the system works, which is why we subscribe to, plain old bread and butter limits on campaign donations. Even so, it's not tiny. It's $3,300 is what you're allowed to contribute at a maximum. But that's tiny compared to the $1 million donations that you can make in the big parties. We passed campaign finance reform in my home state, and the progressive Democratic legislature in my home state repealed public financing on a voice vote because they don't want competition. One last thing I'll mention, ranked choice voting. A very important reform. You've got to find out. I can't say enough good things about that, except, and you may or may not know this, that the Democrats are fighting it. Why are they fighting it? Because they rely on fear-mongering. Why do they rely on fear-mongering? Because they're not going to actually give you what you want and what you need. Therefore, they have to scare you into voting for them because they can't earn your vote. Why? Because they're too busy pleasing their big money donors, the bankers and the billionaires and AIPAC and all that. So what's wrong with this system is that it is not democracy, and we have the potential like never before to overturn it starting in this election. Thank you.
So what are your views after an end to military aid and end to economic aid to Israel? The battle is far from over. We know that there are illegal settlements. This year alone, there's thousands or almost 10 or 20 times the amount of illegal settlements built in Palestinian territories that are illegal. So what are your plans to go after that, even after a ceasefire?
So, of course, the first move is to get aid in, emergency aid, in huge quantities, and to stop the stranglehold of starvation, which has about 500,000 people in its grip right now. So every day that we fight is really critical. Lives are on the line, in huge numbers. So that's, obviously step one. But in addition, if we can stop the genocide right now, then we still have to deal with the occupation and the continuing ethnic cleansing and the apartheid state of Israel and the settlements and all the rest. Fortunately, international law has already said what needs to be done, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We just have to ensure that that Israel is going to comply with the rulings of the International Court of Justice. And that includes, by the way, not only dismantling the settlements, which has been specifically required by the International Court of Justice. Not only no new settlements, but the settlements are there, need to be undone. And in addition, the right of return needs to be respected. Absolutely. We can only do this by abiding by international law. If we're trying to, invent the wheel here on the fly, it's going to be difficult. But fortunately, that body of international law is there. The rulings have already been made. The United Nations and virtually every country around the world is in support. So we have a great base to move forward, but it's going to take a lot of organizing. We have the support of the American people, but it's going to take a lot of dialogue and discussion to keep this moving forward. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not just this genocide, but it's the whole It's the whole phenomenon of empire that basically needs to be dismantled. We no longer live in a monopolar world. We're going to continue running into devastating conflicts, and we've got 3 of them right now going on that could potentially go nuclear. We're not going to get out of here alive with that kind of mindset continuing. We need to graduate, from being the bully in the schoolyard. In the words of Martin Luther King, my country is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today, true then, true now. That cannot be the basis of our foreign policy. We need to move from being the bully in the schoolyard to being a member of a multipolar world and become an adult in the room, abiding by international law and human rights, so that we can ensure that we're all going to get out of here alive together and create a world that we can all survive in and that we can all thrive in. We have the resources to do that. We just have to resolve and know our power. And that's one last point I want to make. They want you to think that you don't count, that you're small, that your vote doesn't matter, and that resistance is futile. They are working overtime to make you think that because they are terrified that people are not learning that lesson. We are not behaving like good little boys and girls. We are standing up to demand the justice and the humanity that we deserve. So the name of the game is flicking the switch in your own brain from powerless to powerful. Powerful is what we are. We have the numbers, we have the solutions, and we have shared human values here together. We can make this work. Do not let them try to talk you out of it.
Before I'll give you a chunk of last questions, like maybe 2 or 3, and then we can wrap up in a little bit. But before we continue, I just want to remind everyone that there's QR codes around the room for donations. The Green Party does not accept money from big lobbying groups like AIPAC. So this is a people-funded campaign, so every dollar counts, and your support means a lot. So the next question is that why the Muslim vote? Why is it that it feels like we're going after the Muslim vote? Why does the Muslim vote matter so much? Should we build? What do you think about AIPAC's lobbying system? How have you battled that? How have you seen that in your campaign efforts? And do you think it would be a good idea for Palestinians to also build a large lobbying group? Is that something that would help? And what do you have to say about the government secret watch list that thousands of Muslim Americans found themselves in for exercising their constitutional rights of supporting the freedom for Palestine, which CARE estimated over 90% of those placed in these secret watch lists are Muslims. Yeah. And finally, the question is, what are your thoughts on relations with China and Russia?
Great. All right. Terrific questions. The Muslim vote really matters because of Muslims' human values and your real-world experience being on the receiving end of empire in other countries and on the receiving end of empire in this country with the assault on our civil liberties, on our right to privacy, on the likes of watch lists and the Patriot Act and all that. So Muslims have a rare combination of the experience and the moral fiber and the integrity and the courage to stand up, and the Muslim community has been doing that from the get-go, and is really kind of the spark and the trigger that we need for truly transformative change. So I thank you all for that. About AIPAC, there was a investigative report done by Lee Fang, who's an investigative reporter. He used to work for The Intercept. Now he has his own thing on Substack. Worth checking it out because he documents the flow of money from the Knesset, from the Israeli government, to nonprofit organizations in this country who are then changing laws and influencing our political system. So this is really, I don't know how this is not a flagrant violation of FARA, of the Foreign Agent Registration Act. And these recent revelations about how this worked, like all the anti-BDS legislation in 27 different states. How did it get there? It didn't get there by accident. It got there with lobbying money that appears now to have come from Israel itself. So this is flagrantly illegal and a real violation of basic principles of democracy and the Foreign Agent Registration Act. So I think we could begin to see a lot of action against AIPAC and affiliated organizations that have been involved, for example, in a whole flurry of new rules on campuses that prevent students from standing up, from organizing, from being heard. This also didn't happen by accident. The targeting of the heads of universities that was done in Congress, that also didn't happen by accident. There is method to this madness, and that method is being paid for, and it looks like a lot of the payment is coming from the Israeli government. So all of this could come crashing down in a big way in the courts. So stay tuned, be of courage, don't get discouraged. Justice will have out here. These are flagrant violations of our civil liberties that are taking place, and those will only endure for so long. Should there be a Muslim lobbying group? Absolutely. There's lobbying as people, and then there's lobbying with money. It's when you're lobbying with money and making campaign contributions, that's when the questions come up. And let me just say that within the Green Party, what we definitely do not do is accept corporate PACs. We don't work with corporate PACs, and we also don't work with super PACs, because super PACs are conduits for huge amounts of money, and in our view, that's just inherently dangerous. Stuff that is not that. There are other PACs which are public interest, and some Green candidates do work with public interest PACs. It's like when there are PACs that are representing corporate interests, that's a definite no-no. The other stuff, which is public interest, is certainly something to be discussed and decided and worthy of consideration. But whether there is a PAC or whether it is lobbying with words and with people and bodies and getting out to exert collective pressure on our representatives, that is a definite yes. And that's just part of democracy. Secret watch lists, how can these not be a violation of our Fourth Amendment rights? Basically, these amount to unwarranted searches and potentially seizures. So in my view, these are unconstitutional, and our administration would challenge both the Patriot Act as well as the secret watch lists. China and Russia. So we're in a very dangerous conflict right now with Russia, which could have been avoided altogether. Any expert on Eastern Europe knew that it was asking for trouble when the US violated its promise to Russia that we would not move NATO 1 inch to the east. What's going on in Russia is essentially no different from what we did during the Cuban Missile Crisis. When there were Russian missiles on our border, we launched the nuclear weapons, they were in the air. Fortunately, we had leaders who were not afraid of negotiations. Right now, the US has refused to negotiate over and over and over again with Russia, unfortunately. But this conflict could have been eminently avoided. It's a tragedy for the people of Ukraine who are losing